My principal pulled me from class without explanation. She handed me plane tickets I never asked for. Mrs. Brennan appeared at my AP history classroom door during third period, holding a manila folder and looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. She whispered something to Mr. Keating, who glanced at me and nodded. "Derek, gather your things and go with Principal Brennan, please." I stuffed my textbook into my backpack, confused, because I hadn't done anything wrong. I had perfect attendance and a 4.0 GPA. Mrs. Brennan didn't say anything while we walked down the empty hallway to her office. She closed the door behind us and sat down at her desk. "I need you to sit down, Derek. This is going to be difficult to process." I sat in the chair across from her and noticed she had papers spread across her desk with my name on them. She pulled an envelope from the folder and slid it across to me. Inside were plane tickets to Phoenix, Arizona, departing tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. "What are these for?" Mrs. Brennan folded her hands on her desk and her voice sounded rehearsed. "Your Uncle Frank arranged for your transfer to Desert Ridge Academy. It's a wonderful school with excellent programs. Everything has been finalized." I stared at the tickets, trying to make sense of what she just said. "Transfer? I don't have an Uncle Frank, and my mom would have told me if we were moving to Arizona." Mrs. Brennan opened the folder and showed me documents with signatures at the bottom. "Your uncle is your father's brother. He's your legal guardian now, according to these custody papers. Your mother signed over guardianship last week." The papers looked official with court stamps and everything, but something felt completely wrong. My dad died when I was 8 years old in a car accident. I didn't remember him having a brother. Mom never mentioned any uncle. "I need to call my mom right now." Mrs. Brennan pushed her desk phone toward me. "Of course. You can use my phone." I dialed Mom's cell and it rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. Mrs. Brennan watched me with this calm expression that made my stomach hurt. "Your mother is probably busy at work, Derek. She's a nurse and can't always answer her phone during shifts." I tried our home phone next and it rang until the machine picked up. Mom's voice on the recording sounded normal and happy, asking callers to leave a message. "Mom, it's me. I'm in the principal's office. Call me back immediately. Something really weird is happening." I hung up and looked at Mrs. Brennan. "This doesn't make any sense. My mom wouldn't give away custody without telling me. She wouldn't do that." Mrs. Brennan slid another paper across her desk, showing an address in Phoenix. "Your Uncle Frank has been planning this for months. He wants to provide you with better opportunities. Desert Ridge Academy is a prestigious private school with connections to top universities. You should be grateful for this chance." Grateful. The word made my hands shake because I wasn't grateful. I was terrified. Mrs. Brennan stood up and walked to a filing cabinet. "You'll need to clean out your locker today. Transportation has been arranged to take you home to pack. Your flight leaves at 6 a.m. tomorrow from Philadelphia International." "I'm not going anywhere until I talk to my mom." Mrs. Brennan turned around, and her friendly expression changed to something colder. "Derek, this isn't optional. The custody arrangement is legally binding. Your Uncle Frank has full authority now." She pulled out another document and showed me a page with my mom's signature at the bottom. The signature looked right, but the document was dated last Wednesday. Mom had been home with me last Wednesday. We'd watched movies together after dinner. She acted completely normal. Nothing about transferring custody or moving to Arizona. "Can I see all of these papers?" Mrs. Brennan hesitated, then pushed the entire folder toward me. "You can look through everything, but it won't change the situation. Your mother made her decision." I pulled out my phone and took photos of every single page, while Mrs. Brennan watched. The custody papers, the school transfer documents, the court orders, all of it. Something inside me knew I needed proof of whatever was happening. Mrs. Brennan didn't stop me from photographing the documents, which seemed strange if everything was legitimate. The office door opened and a man I'd never seen before walked in without knocking. He was in his 40s, wearing jeans and a polo shirt with thinning brown hair. "Derek, I'm Frank Holloway, your father's brother. It's good to finally meet you." He extended his hand, but I didn't shake it. "I don't know you. My mom never mentioned you." Frank lowered his hand and sat in the chair next to mine. "Your mother and I have had our differences over the years. She kept you away from your father's side of the family after he died, but that's changing now." His voice sounded fake friendly, the way adults talk when they're lying to kids. Mrs. Brennan stood up and moved toward the door. I'll give you two some privacy to talk." She left before I could protest, leaving me alone with this stranger claiming to be my uncle. Frank leaned back in his chair and looked around the office. "This is a nice school, but Desert Ridge Academy is better. You'll have access to resources your mother can't provide on a nurse's salary." "Why would my mom sign over custody? That doesn't make any sense." Frank pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a large house with a pool. "This is where you'll be living. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, your own space. Much better than that apartment you're in now." He knew where we lived, which made this feel even more wrong. "You've been watching us?" Frank laughed and put his phone away. "I've been keeping track of my nephew, making sure you're okay. Your mother has done her best, but let's be honest, she's struggling. Working double shifts at the hospital, barely making rent. I can give you stability." Everything he said about Mom was technically true. She did work double shifts. We did live in a small apartment, but she never complained, and I never felt like we were struggling. Frank stood up and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. "Your father would have wanted you to have opportunities, good schools, college preparation, a real future. Your mother can't give you that, but I can." I pulled out my phone and tried calling Mom again, straight to voicemail this time without even ringing. "What did you do to my mom?" Frank turned around, and his friendly expression disappeared completely. "I didn't do anything. Your mother made a rational choice. She knows you'll be better off with me." He walked back to the desk and picked up the plane tickets. "These are non-refundable. You're leaving tomorrow whether you accept it now or not." Mrs. Brennan came back into the office carrying a cardboard box. "For your locker items, Derek. I'll walk you down there now." Frank nodded at her, and she nodded back, confirming they'd coordinated all of this together. I stood up, holding my phone and backpack. "I'm not cleaning out my locker. I'm not leaving tomorrow. This is kidnapping." Frank's jaw tightened. "It's not kidnapping. It's a legal custody transfer. Your mother signed the papers. The court approved it. You're a minor, and you don't get to decide." Mrs. Brennan put her hand on my shoulder, and I jerked away from her touch. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." We walked down the hallway toward the lockers, while other students were still in class. The building felt empty and wrong. At my locker, Mrs. Brennan held the box while I opened the combination lock. Inside were textbooks, notebooks, my gym clothes, photos of me and Mom, and a small trophy from last year's math competition. I put everything in the box slowly, while my brain tried to figure out what to do. Austin appeared at the end of the hallway coming back from the bathroom. He saw me cleaning out my locker and walked over looking confused. "What's going on?" Mrs. Brennan stepped between us. "Derek is transferring schools. He needs to finish clearing his locker." Austin looked at me and I could tell he knew something was seriously wrong. "Transferring where?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Mrs. Brennan cut me off. "That's private family business. You need to return to class." Austin didn't move. "Derek, what's happening?" I pulled out my phone and texted him quickly while Mrs. Brennan watched. "Principal giving me plane tickets to Arizona. Says uncle has custody. Mom not answering phone. Something wrong." I hit send before Mrs. Brennan could grab my phone. Austin's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out reading my message. His eyes went wide. "You can't just take him out of school without his mom's permission." Mrs. Brennan's voice got sharp. "I have all the legal documentation required. Now, return to class before you get detention." Austin looked at me one more time. "I'm texting my dad. He's a lawyer." He turned and ran down the hallway before Mrs. Brennan could stop him. She grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "That was incredibly stupid. You're making this worse for yourself." Frank appeared from around the corner. "Problem?" Mrs. Brennan's grip on my arm tightened. "His friend is getting his father involved. We need to move faster." Frank pulled car keys from his pocket. "Then let's go now. Forget the apartment. We'll buy him new clothes in Phoenix." I tried to pull away from Mrs. Brennan, but she held on. "You're not taking me anywhere." Frank grabbed my other arm, and together they dragged me toward the front entrance. I dropped my backpack and the box of locker stuff trying to break free. Students started coming out of nearby classrooms for passing period. People stared as the principal and a strange man physically dragged me through the school. "Let go of me! Someone call the police!" A teacher I didn't know stepped forward. "Mrs. Brennan." What's going on? She didn't answer, just kept pulling me forward. We got outside to the parking lot where a silver SUV was parked in the fire lane. Frank opened the back door and shoved me inside. Mrs. Brennan leaned in. Remember Derek? Your mother signed the papers? Fighting this just makes everything harder. She slammed the door and Frank got in the driver's seat. He locked the doors using the control panel and started the engine. I grabbed the door handle, but the child locks were engaged. Let me out! This is kidnapping! Frank backed out of the parking space. Stop being dramatic. You're going to your new home. I pulled out my phone and started to dial 911, but Frank reached back and grabbed it from my hand. Give me that. He threw my phone out the window onto the parking lot pavement. I watched it skid across the ground and shatter. Frank drove out of the school parking lot and turned onto the main road. Here's how this works. You can cooperate and make the transition easy, or you can fight and make it miserable. Either way, you're coming to Phoenix. We drove past familiar streets and shops while I tried to think of a way to escape. At a red light, I banged on the window, trying to get attention from the car next to us. Frank reached back and grabbed my wrist, twisting it hard. Stop that right now. The pain made my eyes water, but I kept trying to signal for help. The driver in the other car was an elderly woman who looked over confused but didn't do anything. The light turned green and Frank accelerated. You're only hurting yourself. Nobody is going to help you. They all think this is a normal family situation. We got on the highway heading toward my apartment, and I realized Frank was serious about taking me home to pack. If I could get inside, maybe I could find Mom's laptop or something to prove this was wrong. Frank exited the highway and drove through our neighborhood. He pulled into the parking lot of our apartment complex and parked near our building. We're going inside. You're going to pack a suitcase with clothes and essentials. Then we're driving to a hotel near the airport. Tomorrow morning, we fly to Phoenix. If you try anything stupid, I will make your mother's life very difficult. Do you understand? I didn't answer. Frank got out and opened my door. Move. We walked up the stairs to the second floor and stopped at apartment 2B. Keys. I pulled my house keys from my pocket and unlocked the door. Inside, everything looked exactly like I'd left it that morning. Mom's nursing textbooks on the coffee table, our photos on the walls, her coffee mug in the sink. Frank closed the door behind us. Pack fast. We're leaving in 30 minutes. I went to my bedroom and pulled a duffel bag from my closet. Frank stood in the doorway watching me. I threw clothes into the bag while looking around my room for anything that could help. On my desk was Mom's old laptop that she let me use for homework. I needed that laptop. Can I bring my laptop for schoolwork? Frank shook his head. Desert Ridge Academy provides all technology. You don't need that old thing. He was lying. He didn't want me to have any way to contact people or look up information. I kept packing while my mind raced through possibilities. Mom's nursing schedule was pinned to the refrigerator. If I could see when she was working, maybe I could prove she couldn't have signed those papers last Wednesday. I need to use the bathroom. Frank stepped aside. Door stays open. I went into the bathroom and closed the door anyway. Frank immediately pushed it back open. I said, door open. Through the open door, I could see into the hallway. Mom's purse was hanging on the coat hook by the front door. Her phone was probably in there. I flushed the toilet and washed my hands slowly. I'm hungry. Can I make a sandwich before we leave? Frank checked his watch. Fine, 5 minutes. I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. While making a sandwich, I positioned myself so Frank couldn't see my right hand. I grabbed Mom's purse from the coat hook and felt inside for her phone. My fingers found it and I pulled it out carefully. The screen was locked, but I knew her passcode. Her birthday, backwards. I unlocked the phone and immediately checked her text messages. Nothing from Frank or anyone about custody. Her calendar showed she was working today at the hospital from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I took photos of her messages and calendar with her phone camera, then recorded a video explaining what was happening. Frank Holloway is trying to take me to Arizona. He has fake custody papers. I'm being kidnapped. This is Derek. Today is November 6th. Time is 11:30 a.m. If you see this, call the police. I sent the video to Austin, to Mom's email, and to 3 other contacts in her phone. Then I put the phone back in her purse. Frank appeared in the kitchen doorway. Time's up. Let's go. I grabbed my sandwich and the duffel bag. Frank checked every room, making sure I hadn't hidden anywhere or left messages. Smart boy, no tricks. We walked out, and Frank locked the apartment door behind us. At the SUV, Frank opened the trunk and threw my duffel bag inside. "Get in the back seat." I climbed in, and he locked the doors again. We drove for 20 minutes to a hotel near the airport. Frank parked and grabbed my bag from the trunk. Inside the lobby, he walked up to the front desk. "Reservation for Holloway." The desk clerk checked her computer. "Yes, sir. 1 room with 2 beds for tonight. Checking out tomorrow morning." She handed Frank 2 key cards, and he gave one to me. Room 314. The elevator ride was silent. Inside the hotel room, Frank threw my bag on one bed and sat on the other. "Order room service if you want dinner. We're not leaving this room until tomorrow morning." I sat on my bed and tried to think through what was happening. Frank had fake custody papers. He'd coordinated with Mrs. Brennan to pull me from school. He destroyed my phone and was keeping me prisoner in a hotel room. This wasn't about giving me opportunities. This was about something else. Money. It had to be money. My dad died in a car accident that wasn't his fault. There was a settlement from the insurance company. Mom put it all in a trust fund for my college. The trust fund. That's what Frank wanted. "How much money is in my college fund?" Frank looked up from his phone. "What?" I stood up. "My dad's life insurance money, the settlement from his accident. Mom put it in a trust fund for my college. That's what this is about." Frank's expression changed. "Sit down, Derek." I didn't sit. "If you have custody of me, you control the money. That's why you forged those papers. How much is it? 100,000? More?" Frank stood up and took a step toward me. "You're a minor. You don't get to ask questions. You do what you're told." My hands started shaking. "My mom would never sign over custody. Those papers are fake. You forged her signature." Frank's jaw clenched. "Your mother is barely surviving, working endless shifts, drowning in debt, living in a tiny apartment. I offered her a deal. She signs over custody, I take care of you, and I give her $50,000 to pay off her debts." $50,000? Out of how much in the trust fund? How much is really in the trust? Frank smiled. $350,000. When you turn 18, you get access. But if I'm your legal guardian, I can petition the court to access funds for your education and living expenses, starting immediately. $350,000 from my dad's death. That's why Frank wanted custody. He could drain the entire fund before I turned 18. My mom would never agree to this. Frank sat back down on his bed. She already did. I met with her last week. She was desperate. Behind on rent, credit card debt piling up, barely keeping food on the table. I offered her a way out. She cried, but she signed. Something about his story felt wrong. Mom never mentioned being behind on rent. We always had food. She worked a lot, but we weren't desperate. You're lying. My mom wouldn't sell me for $50,000. Frank pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a check made out to Rebecca Pearson for $50,000. The check was dated last Thursday. I gave her the money after she signed. She probably hasn't deposited it yet out of guilt. Check her purse when we get back. I stared at the photo of the check. Could Mom really have done this? Was she that desperate? No. Something was still wrong. If she agreed, why isn't she answering her phone? Frank put his phone away. Because she doesn't want to talk to you while you're upset. She knew you'd be angry. She's giving you space to process. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot below. 3 stories up with no fire escape. Even if I could get out of the room, Frank would catch me before I got far. I want to call my mom from your phone. Frank shook his head. No calls. You can talk to her after we get to Phoenix and you've calmed down. That confirmed it. Mom didn't know what was happening. If she'd really agreed, Frank would let me call her to verify. This was a kidnapping disguised as a custody transfer. I needed help, but I had no phone and no way to contact anyone, unless Austin's dad got my message, unless Mom checked her email, unless someone saw that video. I sat back down on my bed. Can I watch TV? Frank grabbed the remote and turned on the television. Sure, we've got nothing but time. He flipped through channels and stopped on a news station. I pretended to watch while my brain worked through every possible escape plan. The hotel room door had a deadbolt and chain lock. Frank would hear if I tried to open it. The bathroom window was too small to climb through. Hours passed while we sat in that hotel room. Frank ordered pizza for dinner, and we ate in silence. At 8:40 p.m., Frank's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and stepped into the bathroom to answer it privately. I heard his muffled voice through the door but couldn't make out the words. He came back out looking annoyed. "Change of plans. We're leaving tonight instead of tomorrow morning. Pack up." My stomach dropped. "Why?" Frank threw his belongings into his overnight bag. "Your friend's lawyer father is asking questions. Mrs. Brennan called. There's a police inquiry. We need to get out of Pennsylvania before they figure out what's happening." So Austin did get help. The police were looking for me. Frank grabbed my duffel bag and shoved it at me. "Move fast. We're driving to Phoenix instead of flying. By the time the police sort through the paperwork, we'll be in Arizona, and the custody arrangement will be enforceable there." He was running. That meant the fake papers wouldn't hold up to scrutiny. We took the elevator down to the lobby and Frank walked quickly to the SUV. He threw both bags in the trunk and we got inside. Frank pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the highway. "How long does it take to drive to Arizona?" Frank merged onto Interstate 76. 36 hours if we drive straight through. We'll take turns sleeping." 36 hours trapped in a car with someone trying to steal my trust fund. I had to get away before we got too far from Pennsylvania. Frank's phone rang again, and he answered using the car's Bluetooth. Mrs. Brennan's voice came through the speakers. "The police are at the school demanding to see the custody paperwork. I told them everything was properly filed, but they're not backing down. They want to verify with Derek's mother. How far are you?" Frank checked the GPS. "Just past Harrisburg, 2 hours from the Maryland border." Mrs. Brennan's voice sounded stressed. "They're sending officers to Rebecca's hospital. When she tells them she didn't sign anything, they'll issue an Amber Alert. You need to get off the major highways." Frank cursed and took the next exit. "I'll stick to back roads. Tell them you sent Derek home sick and don't know where he is now." Mrs. Brennan paused. "That won't work. His friend Austin told police you physically removed him from school. There's a witness statement. I could lose my job over this." Frank's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You'll lose more than your job if this falls apart. You accepted $20,000 to cooperate. That makes you an accessory." $20,000. Frank had bribed the principal. Mrs. Brennan hung up without responding, and Frank threw his phone onto the passenger seat. He looked at me in the rearview mirror. "This is your fault. If you'd just cooperated, everything would have been fine." We drove through small towns on rural roads. Frank kept checking the mirrors like he expected police cars to appear. My mind raced through options. If we got pulled over, I could scream for help. If we stopped for gas, I could run. I just needed an opportunity. Around midnight, Frank pulled into a gas station in the middle of nowhere. "I'm filling up. You're staying in the car. Doors are locked. If you try to run, I will catch you, and I will hurt you. Understand?" I nodded. Frank got out and went to the pump. I watched him swipe his credit card and start fueling. The gas station was empty except for a clerk visible through the window. If I could get the clerk's attention, maybe they'd call police. I tried the door handle, but the child locks were engaged. I banged on the window, but the clerk was looking down at their phone. Frank finished pumping and got back in the car. "Nice try." We drove for another hour before Frank pulled into a rest stop. "Bathroom break, 5 minutes. I'm coming with you." We walked into the rest stop building, and Frank stood outside the bathroom stall while I used it. At the sink, I noticed a woman washing her hands. "Help me. I'm being kidnapped." The woman's eyes went wide. Frank appeared immediately. "Sorry about him. Teenage drama. He's mad we're moving to Arizona." The woman looked between us, unsure what to believe. I grabbed her arm. "He's not my father. He forged custody papers. Please call the police." Frank smiled at the woman. "He's upset about leaving his friends. Classic teenage rebellion. Come on, Derek." He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the exit. The woman called after us. "Should I call someone?" Frank waved her off. "We're fine. Thank you." Outside, Frank shoved me toward the SUV. That was really stupid. He threw me into the back seat and slammed the door. "If you try that again, I'm tying your hands." We drove away from the rest stop, and I watched through the back window hoping to see police lights. Nothing, just dark highway. Hours passed. Frank pulled over at another rest stop around 3 a.m. "I need to sleep for a few hours. You're not getting out of this car." He reclined his seat and closed his eyes. I sat in the back trying to stay awake. If Frank fell into deep sleep, maybe I could unlock the doors somehow. But he'd taken the keys with him. After 30 minutes, Frank's breathing became slow and steady. I carefully tried the door handle again. Still locked. I looked around the back seat for anything I could use. Nothing except my duffel bag in the trunk. Frank's phone buzzed on the passenger seat. The screen lit up with a text message preview. Police called. They know everything. Rebecca filed kidnapping report. Amber alert issued. Get rid of the phone. Destroy it. The message was from Mrs. Brennan. An Amber alert. That meant every police officer in multiple states was looking for this SUV. Frank's phone buzzed again with another message. Reward offered for information leading to Derek's safe return. Your face is all over the news. Frank woke up and grabbed his phone. He read the messages and cursed loudly. We need to switch vehicles. He started the engine and pulled back onto the highway. We drove until sunrise, when Frank exited into a small town in Virginia. He pulled into a shopping center parking lot and parked far from other cars. Stay here. He got out and walked across the lot toward a row of older cars. I watched as he tried door handles until he found an unlocked truck. Frank opened the door and bent down under the steering column. After a few minutes, the truck's engine started. He'd hot-wired it. Frank drove the truck over to the SUV and transferred our bags. Get in the truck, now. I climbed out of the SUV and into the truck's passenger seat. Frank got in the driver's side. This buys us time. Police are looking for the SUV, not this truck. He drove out of the parking lot, leaving the SUV behind. We headed west on smaller highways. Frank kept the radio on, scanning for news. At 8 a.m., a news bulletin came through. Authorities are searching for 16-year-old Derek Pearson, who was allegedly taken from his high school yesterday by Frank Holloway. Pearson is described as 5'10", with brown hair and blue eyes. Holloway is 44 years old, approximately 6 feet tall, with thinning brown hair. Anyone with information should contact police immediately. A $10,000 reward is being offered. $10,000. That was a lot of money for information. Frank turned off the radio. Reward won't matter. By tonight we'll be in Arizona, where I have people who will hide us until the custody papers can be enforced. People who would hide a kidnapper. Frank had planned this thoroughly. We drove through West Virginia on back roads. Frank stopped at a small convenience store and went inside, leaving me in the truck. The truck was old and didn't have automatic locks. I could open the door. This was my chance. I grabbed the door handle and pushed it open. Frank was inside the store at the counter paying for gas. I ran across the parking lot toward the road. Behind me, I heard Frank yell, "Stop!" I kept running. A car pulled into the parking lot, and I ran toward it, waving my arms. "Help! Call the police!" The driver was an older man who stopped his car, confused. "What's wrong?" Frank caught up and grabbed me from behind. "Sorry, sir. My nephew has some mental health issues. He gets confused sometimes." The old man looked at me, and I tried to pull away from Frank. "I'm Derek Pearson. There's an Amber alert. He kidnapped me. Please call 911. The old man's eyes widened with recognition. "I saw that on the news this morning." Frank's grip tightened painfully on my arms. "He's confused. I'm his legal guardian." The old man pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police just to be safe." Frank let go of me suddenly and ran back to the truck. I heard the engine start and tires squeal. Frank drove out of the parking lot at high speed, leaving me behind. The old man dialed 911 while I stood there shaking. "Yes, I have Derek Pearson here, the boy from the Amber Alert. We're at the quick stop on Route 50 in Aurora, West Virginia. The man who had him just fled in a blue pickup truck heading west." He stayed on the phone, giving more details while I sat down on the curb. My whole body was trembling. The old man sat next to me. "You're safe now, son. Police are on their way." Within 10 minutes, 3 police cars pulled into the parking lot with lights flashing. Officers got out and approached us carefully. "Derek Pearson?" I nodded and started crying. One officer knelt down next to me. "You're okay. We've got you. Can you tell us what happened?" I explained everything through tears. The fake custody papers, Mrs. Brennan pulling me from class, Frank forcing me into his car, driving toward Arizona, stealing the truck. The officer recorded everything on his body camera. Another officer was already on the radio. "We have Derek Pearson safe at our location. Suspect fled westbound on Route 50 in a stolen blue pickup, requesting all units in pursuit." They took me to the Aurora police station, where I gave a detailed statement to detectives. Someone brought me food and water. A detective named Officer Campbell sat across from me with a notepad. "Derek, we've been in contact with your mother. She's driving down from Philadelphia right now to pick you up. She's very worried about you." Tears started again. "Is she okay?" Officer Campbell nodded. "She's fine. She never signed any custody papers. Frank Holloway forged her signature. We have evidence of the fraud." The door opened, and another detective came in. Frank Holloway was apprehended trying to cross into Kentucky. State police boxed him in, and he surrendered without incident. Mrs. Brennan was also arrested at the school this morning. Both are being charged with kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. A weight lifted off my chest. They caught him. Frank couldn't get to my trust fund. Officer Campbell smiled. "You did everything right. Telling your friend, recording that video message, asking strangers for help. You saved yourself." Mom arrived at the police station 4 hours later and ran into the room, pulling me into the tightest hug of my life. She was crying and holding my face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't answer when you called. My phone died during my shift, and I didn't realize until I checked it on my break. I saw all the messages from the school and police. I thought I lost you." I hugged her back. "It wasn't your fault. Frank planned everything. He forged your signature." Mom pulled back and looked at me. "Did he hurt you?" I shook my head. "Just scared me." Officer Campbell gave Mom a folder. "These are copies of all the fraudulent documents Frank created. We'll need them for the prosecution. Mrs. Brennan is cooperating with investigators. She admitted Frank paid her $20,000 to help orchestrate the kidnapping. She's facing multiple felony charges." Mom's hands shook as she looked through the papers. "He forged my signature perfectly. How did he get my information?" Officer Campbell explained. "Frank Holloway is actually your ex-husband's half-brother from a second marriage. They were never close. After your husband died, Frank researched the accident settlement and discovered the trust fund. He's been planning this scheme for over a year." We drove back to Philadelphia that night. Mom kept reaching over to touch my arm like she needed to confirm I was really there. At home, she made tea, and we sat on the couch. "I never knew about Frank. Your father never mentioned a half-brother." I leaned against her. "He knew everything about us. Where we lived, where I went to school, your work schedule. He'd been watching us." Mom's face went pale. "The police said they found surveillance photos in his apartment. Pictures of you leaving for school, me going to work. He'd been stalking us for months. The violation of that made me feel sick. Some stranger had been documenting our lives, planning to steal from us." Mom squeezed my hand. "The detective said your trust fund is safe. Frank never got access to it. They're pursuing criminal charges for attempted fraud, kidnapping, and forgery. He could get 20 years in prison." 20 years felt appropriate for someone who tried to destroy our lives for money. The next day, Austin came over and hugged me at the door. "Dude, when you texted me from the locker, I knew something was seriously wrong. My dad called police immediately." Austin's dad had filed an emergency report based on my text message. That triggered the investigation that led to the Amber Alert. "Your text saved you. Police said, without that initial report, Frank might have gotten you out of state before anyone realized what happened." We spent the afternoon playing video games and pretending everything was normal, but I kept thinking about how close I came to being trapped in Arizona with a criminal. Mrs. Brennan made the news that evening. The reporter stood outside the school. "Former Principal Margaret Brennan has been charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, and accepting a bribe." According to police, Brennan accepted $20,000 from Frank Holloway to facilitate the abduction of 16-year-old Derek Pearson from the school. Brennan allegedly pulled Pearson from class under false pretenses and coordinated with Holloway to remove him from school property. She faces up to 30 years in prison if convicted. Mom turned off the TV. "I'm suing the school district. They're responsible for keeping students safe. Brennan betrayed that trust." Over the next 2 weeks, more details emerged. Police found Frank had created an entire fake identity claiming to be my guardian. He'd forged court documents, created fake signatures, and built an elaborate backstory about Mom being unable to care for me. The preliminary hearing happened 3 weeks later. Mom and I sat in the courtroom while Frank was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He wouldn't look at us. The prosecutor presented evidence of the forgery, the bribery, the kidnapping. Frank's public defender tried to argue he believed he was acting in my best interest, providing opportunities my mother couldn't afford. The judge shut that down immediately. Mr. Holloway, you kidnapped a minor, forged legal documents, bribed a school official, and attempted to steal money from a trust fund. There is no interpretation where your actions were in this child's best interest. Frank was denied bail and sent back to jail to await trial. Mrs. Brennan's hearing was similar. She cried and apologized, but the judge wasn't sympathetic. You were in a position of authority and trust. You violated that trust for money. You enabled a kidnapping. The damage you've caused is immeasurable. She was also denied bail. Both trials were scheduled for 6 months later. Mom hired a victim's advocate who helped me process the trauma. Her name was Trina, and she specialized in helping kids who'd survived kidnapping attempts. Derek, what you experienced was deeply violating. A trusted authority figure betrayed you. It's normal to have trust issues after this. We met once a week, and she taught me coping strategies for the anxiety and fear that showed up randomly. I started having nightmares about being trapped in cars or hotel rooms. Trina explained that was normal trauma response. Your brain is processing what happened. Over time, the nightmares will decrease. School was weird for a while. Everyone knew what happened. Some kids treated me like a celebrity. Others avoided me like I was contaminated by tragedy. My teachers were overly gentle at first until I asked them to treat me normally. The new principal, Mr. Dawson, called me to his office one day. Derek, I want you to know you're safe here. We've implemented new protocols. No student can be removed from class without parental contact and verification. What happened with Mrs. Brennan will never happen again. I appreciated the effort, but I still felt on edge every time someone knocked on my classroom door. Austin's dad followed the case closely. One afternoon, he came over to talk to Mom and me. The prosecutors are building strong cases against both Frank and Mrs. Brennan. Frank's facing federal charges too because he crossed state lines. That carries additional penalties. Mom asked about the lawsuit against the school district. We have a solid case. The school failed to verify custody documents. They released your son to someone without proper authorization. We're seeking compensatory damages. 6 months passed, and both trials started. Frank's trial went first. I had to testify about everything that happened. Sitting in that courtroom describing being dragged through school, thrown in his car, driven across state lines while he planned to drain my trust fund. Frank's lawyer tried to paint him as misguided rather than malicious, but the jury didn't buy it. The forged documents, the bribery, the stolen truck, the flight from police. After 3 days of testimony, the jury found Frank guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 22 years in federal prison. Mr. Holloway, you planned and executed a sophisticated scheme to kidnap a minor and steal money that rightfully belonged to him. You showed no remorse until you were caught. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes. Mrs. Brennan's trial was shorter. She'd accepted a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Frank. She admitted accepting the bribe, falsifying school records, and coordinating the kidnapping. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison. Mrs. Brennan, you held a position of profound trust. Parents entrust their children to schools believing those children will be protected. You betrayed that trust for money. Your actions could have resulted in a child being trafficked or worse. 8 years is lenient, considering what might have happened. Both of them were led away in handcuffs. Mom squeezed my hand. It's over. But it wasn't quite over. The school district settled the lawsuit for $400,000. Mom put most of it in my college fund alongside the existing trust. Your education is secure now. What Frank tried to steal is protected. I started sleeping better, knowing Frank was in prison. The nightmares decreased. Trina helped me understand that healing wasn't linear. Some days you'll feel fine. Other days the fear will come back. That's normal. On good days I could go hours without thinking about those 36 hours of terror. On bad days, I avoided cars that looked like Frank's truck. Junior year ended with strong grades despite everything. Mom and I went to visit the old man who'd helped me escape. His name was Harold Mitchell, and he lived on a farm outside Aurora. He gave me a tour of his property, and we talked about what happened. I'm glad I trusted my instinct that day. When you said your name and mentioned the Amber Alert, I knew you were telling the truth. Harold became a friend. Mom and I visited him several times that summer. Senior year started, and I threw myself into college applications. My guidance counselor helped me write my essay about resilience and survival. Derek, you have an incredible story, but make sure it's not just about what happened to you. Focus on how you responded, how you advocated for yourself, how you survived. I got accepted to 4 universities. I chose one in Pennsylvania close to home. After everything, I wanted to stay near Mom. Graduation day felt surreal. Walking across that stage, accepting my diploma while Mom cheered from the audience. I thought about how close I came to never having this moment. Frank wanted to trap me in Arizona, drain my trust fund, and destroy my future. College started in the fall. Business major with plans to eventually get a law degree. I wanted to help other kids in situations like mine. Kids whose trust was violated by adults who should have protected them. Mom helped me move into my dorm and cried when she left. I'm so proud of you. My roommate was a guy named Colin who studied engineering. We became friends immediately. I told him my story one night and he listened without judgment. That's terrifying. How are you so normal after that? I shrugged. Therapy helps, also knowing Frank is in prison. Mom called every few days to check in. She'd taken a less demanding position at the hospital so she'd have more time for herself. I realized I was burning out trying to do everything alone. It's okay to slow down. Her happiness made everything worth it. 2 years into college, I got a letter from the parole board. Frank was petitioning for early release based on good behavior. My stomach dropped. Mom hired a lawyer to fight it. We submitted statements to the parole board detailing the trauma, the ongoing effects, the violation of trust. Frank Holloway should serve his full sentence. Early release would be a miscarriage of justice. The parole board denied Frank's petition. He would serve the full 22 years. Relief washed over me reading that decision. I graduated college with honors 4 years later. Mom and Harold both attended the ceremony. Mom cried through the entire thing. Your father would be so proud. His life insurance money that Frank tried to steal had paid for my education, just like Dad would have wanted. I got accepted to law school that fall. During orientation, I met other students with similar stories of overcoming trauma and fighting for justice. We formed a study group that became a support system. My focus was family law and victim advocacy. 3rd year of law school, I interned with a nonprofit that helped families navigate custody disputes and fraud cases. The work was exactly what I was meant to do. I graduated and passed the bar exam on my first attempt. Mom threw a party at our apartment. Harold drove up from West Virginia. Austin came with his family. Standing in that room, surrounded by people who'd supported me through the worst time of my life, I felt genuinely happy. My first case as a lawyer involved a 15-year-old girl whose stepfather tried to gain custody to access her inheritance. The parallels to my own story were obvious. I fought hard for her, using everything I'd learned from my own experience. We won. The stepfather went to prison, and the girl stayed with her biological mother. After the verdict, the girl hugged me. Thank you for believing me. That moment made every difficult year worth it. I built a career fighting for kids who couldn't fight for themselves. Frank Holloway tried to destroy my future for money, but instead, he gave me purpose. Every case I won was proof that his plan failed completely. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.